When we think about 12-step recovery, a few things probably come to mind, right? Meetings, sponsorship, reading the books. But what if I told you that the entire global movement, this thing that has saved millions of lives, can all be traced back to one single powerful act? Well, that's what we're going to dive into today, the art of the 12th-step call. So when they asked the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson, what he thought was the single most important part of the program, his answer was immediate. No hesitation. Carry the message. Step 12. For him, this wasn't just the last thing on a to-do list, it was the entire point of the whole shebang. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to explore why this step is such a huge deal. Then we'll rewind the clock to the very beginning, to the 3 phone calls that literally started it all. We'll break down the specific technique they used, something called the 5 C's, and see how that method ignited what's known as a golden age of recovery, leaving behind this incredible legacy of service.
Right. So, the most important step. It is so easy to look at step 12 and think, okay, that's the finish line. The thing you do after you've checked all the other boxes. But that's not how the founders saw it. Not at all. For them, it wasn't an endpoint. It was the engine. It's the step that keeps a person's own recovery solid, sure, but it's also what keeps the entire fellowship alive and growing. It really is the heart of the program. The story of Alcoholics Anonymous, it doesn't kick off in some big conference hall or with a fancy book launch. Nope, it all begins with a few simple one-on-one conversations. It was like a chain reaction, one person just reaching out to help another. These are the first 3 12th-step calls.
And what's just wild is how fast this all went down. I mean, look at this timeline. We're talking about a little over 6 months. That's it. It starts with a friend visiting a friend. Then, a guy in a hotel lobby makes a desperate phone call. And finally, 2 newly sober guys visit a 3rd guy in the hospital. These 3 conversations, they are the absolute bedrock of everything that came after. So let's really dig into that first call. Picture this. Thatcher shows up at Bill Wilson's house. Bill's in a bad way, still drinking hard. But he does something brilliant. He doesn't lecture him, he doesn't judge him, he just shares his story. How he got sober through a spiritual experience. That's it. And that act of one drunk talking to another, that's what planted the seed for Bill. All right, now fast forward 5 months. Bill's in Akron, Ohio. A business deal has completely collapsed. He's alone, he's furious, and he's just staring at the hotel bar. And that craving, man, it is hitting him like a ton of bricks. But in that moment of crisis, he has this lightning bolt of an idea. The only thing that can save him from taking a drink is finding another alcoholic to help. The antidote to his own problem was service. So that desperate phone call connects Bill with Dr. Bob Smith, a local surgeon with a severe drinking problem of his own. And the impact was electric. I mean, just listen to Dr. Bob's own words here. For the first time, he was talking to someone who got it, someone who talked his language. That connection, that deep identification, that's the absolute magic of the 12-step call. So just a few weeks after Dr. Bob has his last drink, he and Bill realize they've got to pass it on to stay sober themselves. They find a guy named Billy D., a lawyer, who's in the hospital, just terrified and seeing things. And what do? They don't just talk about their newfound sobriety. They share their drinking stories, the hiding places, the crazy things they did. And Billy D. starts laughing with them. In that moment of connection, the very first AA group was born. Okay, so we've got the origin story. But here's the thing. This wasn't just a series of happy accidents. The early members actually developed a method, a structured approach to these calls. They had a playbook borrowed from a spiritual movement called the Oxford Group that they boiled down into what they called the 5 C's. So what exactly are the 5 C's? Well, it was basically a simple roadmap, a way to guide a conversation with someone who's still really sick and suffering, designed to break through all that denial and isolation by, first and foremost, building a bridge of trust. All right, let's walk through this, because it's actually pretty brilliant. First up, confidence. You get them to trust you by sharing your own story. That's Bill talking to Dr. Bob. Then, number 2 is confession. You admit your own failings, which makes it safe for them to admit theirs. Third, conviction. Because you've been so honest, the other person starts to see the truth about their own situation. Fourth is conversion. This is the big one, the moment they commit to a new way of life. And finally, number 5, continuance. You lock it all in by immediately turning around and helping someone else. See, it's a self-perpetuating cycle of recovery. Now, this methodical, super passionate focus on carrying the message, well, it didn't just help one person here and there. It lit a fuse.
What happened next in the 1940s is what people now call the golden age of AA, where the whole fellowship just grew at this mind-blowing rate. See, back then, service wasn't just a suggestion. It wasn't extra credit. It was the price of admission. Every single member was expected to be a sponsor and to be actively out there doing 12th step work. It was seen as the #1 defense against drinking again, and it was the engine that drove the whole movement.
And the results? They were just insane. Records from Cleveland and Akron at the time showed a success rate of 93%. Let that sink in. 93% of the alcoholics who really worked that program never drank again. That is a number that, frankly, has never been matched since.
And you can guess what that kind of success did for their numbers. It was an explosion. In less than a decade, membership just skyrocketed from around 8,000 people to over 100,000. This wasn't a slow trickle. This was a wildfire of recovery, spreading from one person to the next.
So what was the secret sauce? How'd they pull this off? Well, it boils down to a few key things. First, 12th step calls were happening constantly. Second, they took people through the steps fast, often in less than a month. And third, and this is a big one, they put newcomers to work immediately. You could be sober for a week, and they'd send you into a hospital to sponsor the next guy. The idea was simple. The best way to keep what you have is to give it away.
And all of this brings us back to the central, beautiful idea that's powered this whole thing from the very beginning. This almost paradoxical magic that happens when you help another person.
And look, this isn't just some feel-good platitude. It is the foundational promise of the whole program, and they spell it out right there in the book. The surest way to protect yourself from drinking is through intensive work with other alcoholics. That's not a theory. That's a conclusion drawn from years of life-for-death experience. And that right there, that is the beautiful spiritual logic that makes this whole thing work. The 12-step call isn't primarily for the person receiving the help. It is the fundamental act that keeps the person giving the help sober. By reaching out your hand to someone else, you are in fact saving yourself. So, this leaves us with a much bigger question, right? One that goes way beyond recovery meetings. What is this fundamental power of service? Whether it's mentoring a colleague at work, supporting a friend who's struggling, or just helping a neighbor, how can each of us, in our own lives, carry the message of hope and experience to someone else who really needs to hear it?